Turf Talk with Drew Miller.
On this week's episode of Tiger Turf Talk, we host Mr. Travis Hogan, the head groundskeeper of the Kansas City Chiefs. This is one of the best episodes so far in our journey in this virtual setting. We learned so much about what it takes to be an effective groundskeeper and how one continuously needs to try new and adapt different things when it comes to turf management practices, especially when it comes to Bermuda grass in the transition zone and trying to maintain the same quality of field from the start of training camp in August all the way through the last game in December, prepping for the Super Bowl, which the Kansas City Chiefs were just in. We also had the opportunity to discuss his recent trip to Tampa Bay, where he was able to take the time and prepare the field with the Super Bowl grounds crew, where he was able to paint his own team's end zone. It is such a fantastic story to hear about and understand all the different aspects that go into prepping that field and making sure that it is ready to go for Super Bowl Sunday, the biggest event in football every single year. But honestly, the most interesting and most important thing that our students learn from this podcast is that it truly takes dedication and hard work to be successful. And it's never done one specific way. No way is the right way, especially when it comes to your crew and the way that you guys operate. It all depends on how to adapt, how to change. And one of the great things that Mr. Hogan brought to the table was his time and the golf course side of the industry, where he explained how it impacted the way that he operates as a sports turf manager at the highest level in the NFL. It was such a great opportunity to talk to Mr. Hogan, and we really appreciate him taking the time. It was just a great time. The kids had a lot of fun, and they learned a lot. We hope you enjoy this episode of Tiger Turf Talk. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the 22nd episode of Tiger Turf Talk. I'm your host with your co-host, Ethan Rice. Today, we have a very special guest, Mr. Travis Hogan, the head groundskeeper of the Kansas City Chiefs. We're really excited to have him on, and we really appreciate you taking the time with the long trip that you just had back from the Super Bowl. How are you doing today?
I'm hanging in there. I got one good night of sleep, and that's usually all it takes. So I'm doing well.
That's good. So I just want to sort of dive into Super Bowl week. You were saying it's 110 hours, and it's just incredible the work you guys do. The field played flawlessly. I mean, that was the biggest thing that I took away from it. I know with the paint and everything you guys worked on, it looked gorgeous, but rarely a divot, rarely anything coming up. It was played perfectly. If you could give the kids sort of an idea of what that was like for you going down there and the process for you guys sort of through the weeks. I think it's 2 weeks. Is that correct?
Well, so there's a group that actually shows up about between 3 and 3.5 weeks out. So Ed Mangan is the head groundskeeper for the Atlanta Braves, and he also is in charge of, he's the field director for the Super Bowl. So he then, as you get closer to Super Bowl, they send an email out, usually maybe in November, for, hey, who wants to sign up for the Super Bowl or whatever. And so, that goes through, and then they pick, everyone that's going to end up going. And so, it's not the same group every year, which sometimes is nice. And then sometimes, in a year like this, I think it had to be fairly difficult for Ed, of just, when you get 5 people or 10 people that have never worked a Super Bowl, and you go into a COVID year and all the different restrictions, and then, all the things that they do. Really, for me, I show up. For me, I'm showing up 2 weeks out, which the grass has already been installed. It's already been rolled. It's already been top dressed. They've probably furred it a couple times. A lot of those things are done, before I get there. So really, when I got there, it's more we're going into the painting of the field, and you're just trying to stay on top of painting when you can, around weather, around halftime show rehearsals, and usually Friday before the Super Bowl is a full day of rehearsals on the field. So you're kind of trying to work around that, paint where you can. So the guys that I look at that earn it the most, the guys who are there for the 3.5 weeks. Those are the guys that put in all the time. For me, I'm just showing up and trying to help paint my team's end zone and hope we win.
For sure. I also want to talk. The kids have heard about him, and you have the great opportunity to work with him on an annual basis when you work. George Toma, the man who started the Sports Turf Managers Association. Something I saw this year, which I might have missed on other years, but you guys, it's known as the Toma line. Is that correct?
Yeah.
You guys
down the
painted
side.
that this year. I don't know if you do that every year, but it was recognizable this year. I thought that was really cool. Could you sort of explain how significant he's been to sort of the whole process? Kids, if you guys don't know, he's the man that's been at every single Super Bowl ever. And he's worked every single one. And I thought he might not make it this year, so I thought that was incredible that he was there this year. So if you could sort of talk to what he is and as a mentor, who he is to you.
Well, he started the entire thing for all of us, really. He's one of the founding fathers. Obviously, there were a few more guys involved.
For sure.
But, look, if you're 92 years old and you've worked 55 Super Bowls and there's a STMA award named after you, then you've probably done something right,
Just a couple things.
He's full of so much knowledge of just, the experience of, when you have that much experience taking care of grass, you've literally seen everything that could possibly happen. So I always enjoy this. That's really, coming out of working 4 games in 5 weeks, hosting our 3rd straight AFC championship. Obviously our season has been, prolonged, which obviously that's why you're here, right? That's why you want to do it. You want to host those games. But it's still a shorter off season. And then you go straight into the bowl. The biggest reason that I love going to the Super Bowl is to hang out with guys. I learn something every year by just having normal conversations of how do you guys paint your border, or how do you paint your lines, or what fertilizer do you like to throw, or in different situations. That's one thing with George, that you always learn something around him and everyone else that's there. When you have a group of 28 to 32 professionals that are there, you're going to learn something. If you don't, then you're not paying any attention, So I always learn something every year that makes us a little bit better.
That's awesome. And sort of to go with that, you're in a very rare position. There's 31 individuals that have your position in the NFL. I could have that number wrong. I apologize if I do. What is that like to have that kind of position and to be able to do things like go to the Super Bowl and work with those that have similar jobs, and bouncing those ideas off, like you said, are really cool. What does that mean to you to sort of get to this point where you're the head groundskeeper in Kansas City?
It means I got lucky, I grew up in a real small town in southeast Missouri of, 2,700 people. 3 towns make up about 2,700 people. And I started in golf and worked in golf for a while and learned a substantial amount there, and then came to sports turf, then went back to golf and came back here. But, to answer the question of what it means, A, it means that I've gotten lucky, and B, I think the biggest thing is you're in a very, rare fraternity, and it's a very tight knit group. I can call any guy in the league and say, hey, I'm having this problem, or what do you think about this, or what have you seen with either this weather, or any different scenario. We all try to help each other any way that we can. Teams may fight on the field and they obviously compete, but groundskeepers are there to try to help each other. It's one that a lot of people see the glory that comes with it, but then they also don't know the hours that come with that, and also the pressure. The field conditions are a very huge part of what goes on, and fields have to be, we have to test them before every game and make sure we meet certain requirements and those type things. I think the biggest thing is you're on national television most of the time. The Super Bowl, you're on worldwide television, and in that, there's a lot of pressure that comes with that to make sure that things are all right. So it's obviously an honor to be in this position. It's just one that it's not always everything it's cracked up to be as well, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, for sure.
There's a lot of things that you deal with that aren't maybe the normal job. So
For sure. And I love how you talk to the safety and the playability aspect, because especially with the Chiefs, I look at Patrick Mahomes, of the investment they've made in him as the 10-year quarterback. And I think you're the frontline person that keeps him safe, when it comes to playability, especially with him running around and everything. I feel like a lot of people lose that. So I do think that's really important for them to understand that you play a huge role in that. And I think that's great. You talked about how you were in golf, and I actually read this amazing article by Golf Course Magazine. I believe that's the name of the magazine. And it talked about sort of your journey from going from golf. I think you started in sports to golf and then back. If you could sort of discuss your journey through the industry and how it's brought you to this point with the Chiefs, and sort of what you brought from golf over to football.
So I grew up playing golf, played a little bit in college, and what every person that grows up playing golf wants to play on the PGA Tour. And I was a really bad putter, and so I knew that those options probably weren't. I wasn't going to have a whole lot of options there. So
I'm a minimum of 4 putts on
yeah,
the green.
well,
If I'm being honest, that's me. So you're probably way better than that.
I knew the tour probably wasn't going to be the avenue, so I was going to be a club pro, and I worked in the pro shop for a year and hated it. Hardly ever got to play golf. Did a lot of closing, and so I just decided to go to golf course maintenance, because those guys at least got off at 2:30 or 3 every day. So I really kind of got into it on a fluke. I went to golf course maintenance so I could play and practice more, and then started asking questions. What are the numbers in the bag mean? Like, what's this fertilizer do? Why are we filling the sprayer? All the things you start looking at of, why do we do this? Got interested in it, and a buddy that I worked with there ended up getting assistant superintendent job at Black Wolf Run up in Kohler, Wisconsin, for the Women's U.S. Open 1998. And each assistant got to hire an intern. So he called me out of the blue one day and just said, "Hey, do you want to be my intern?" And I was like, "Sure." So, moved to Wisconsin for 8 or 9 months and learned a lot. And it was there that I really decided, okay, this is what I want to do. All the other guys that were interns were actually in school, in turf school. I actually wasn't in turf school yet. So applied to Rutgers, got in there, and in that window of getting to the end of the Open, I got another phone call from a friend that lived in Kansas City, and he was the Jackson County extension agent through University of Missouri. And he had come by Arrowhead and Kaufman and just said, "Hey, I'm new in town. If you guys ever have any questions or anything I can help with, or maybe some disease trials or whatever, let me know." And so Andre Bruce was the head groundskeeper at the Chiefs at that time, and he said they were looking for someone to finish the season. So it was the weekend before Thanksgiving, I guess. My buddy called and said, "Hey, the Chiefs are looking for someone to finish the season. I got this guy's number. Call him at 10 o'clock on Monday." So I go into the shop, as cold as can be, no golfers on the golf course. And so I called and he said, "Well, sounds great, but we have a game this weekend. I need you here by this Friday." So I went to my boss at the golf course and said, "Hey, I really kind of want to check out the sports turf side. And normally, obviously, I would turn in at 2 weeks, but if I'm going to do it, I got to go." And so they said, "Thanks for all the work and good luck." So I rolled out of the golf course about 10:30, went to the intern house, packed up my car, drove all night to my parents' house. I pulled in their driveway about 5 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday, hung out through Thanksgiving night, left Ironton, Missouri at about 10 o'clock, 10:30, and rolled into Kansas City about 3 o'clock in the morning, and then showed up at Arrowhead at 8. So came in here, worked the rest of that season, and then went to Rutgers, came back here, did what would be my internship, and I worked here and at Kaufman both, and then graduated from Rutgers the next winter, and then got hired on here full-time in 2000. So I was full-time for a couple of years, and then my same buddy that was here moved to California, and he was the turf grass specialist for the Northern California Golf Association, and they have a big intern program that they only hire like 4 or 5 interns every couple of years, and they're at pretty high-end clubs. And he called me one night and just said, "Hey, I had to fire the intern at Pebble Beach." And I was like, "Okay." He said, "Do you want to do it? Like, will you come out here?" And at first I was like, "No way, man. I don't want to do another internship." I mean, I was full time here. I had a pretty good setup, and I thought about it for a day, and obviously called him back. Can I afford to live out there? What's the scoop? I felt like if I just stayed on the crew for 20 years, I would never get any management experience whatsoever to ever be able to do this job. And so I felt like if I went out there, then obviously I would hope to get an assistant job somewhere within the Pebble Beach company and try to just kind of start the management side and make my way that way, and hope that if a door ever opened back here, then that would be great. And if it doesn't, then so be it. I felt like it was the best decision at the time. So went out there, was an intern for a year, then became the assistant superintendent at Spyglass. Was there for about a year and a half. Moved back to Missouri as a superintendent in Sullivan, Missouri. Then I went to Branson for a few years. And then when the golf market crashed in 08, 09, I'd had kids by that time and didn't really want my kids moving around. And a job actually opened back up here at the stadium. And I called Andre and just said, "Hey, man, I'd like to come back." And so moved back up here, and 6 years later had the opportunity to take over. So crazy ride.
Yeah. So you talked about how you attended Rutgers and studied turf there. So what would you tell our students about your experience there, and like how it would be beneficial for a student interested in pursuing a degree in turf management to go there?
I think it all depends on if if I'd have known coming out of high school what I wanted to do, I would have gone and got a normal 4-year degree and, gone through the normal program at whatever school and graduated. For me, I didn't really figure out what I wanted to do till I was 23, and I didn't want to go through 4 more years of school. And I'd had some college. I still would have had to take, enough classes. I would have been in school for 3 years. I'm trying to support myself. And Rutgers just made sense. A friend of mine had gone there, and he was, smart and good at what he did, and had nothing but good things to say about it. So that's why I decided to go there. Um, the biggest thing I think that I would say is it's accelerated. You know, the the turf program at Rutgers is very accelerated. You're going to learn a boatload, but you're in class 6 to 8 hours a day, every day, and it's you definitely have to apply yourself while you're there. What I personally enjoyed, I actually had a golf course one time. I had an interview for a superintendent job, and first they asked me if I was difficult to work with, and I said, why? And they said, well, because you've never stayed anywhere longer than like a year, 2 years. And I said, well, my career has kind of gone a little faster than I anticipated, but I've always been one that when the door opens, you have to make a decision whether you walk through it or you don't. And if you close it, it may not open again. So for me, I have always been full throttle, barge through it and see where we go. What I loved about the Rutgers program is a lot of guys that I knew that were in 4-year schools, they're in class 9 months a year, and they're going to go do a 3-month internship. Most of the time in those scenarios, they're not going to put you doing anything. You're going to do weed eating and you're going to mow, and you might get on a sprayer a couple times, maybe in that 3-month span, but then you're going to be back at school. For me, I got to take everything that I learned in 3 months at school, and I got to apply it for 9 months. And I felt like that experience really helped me tremendously going forward.
So you just talked about how your career kind of took you all over the place and you quickly switched between jobs, but you also have a unique situation where you return to an organization that you had worked at like earlier in your career. So what has it been like returning to the Chiefs and working for them again, after taking however many years off?
It was definitely a little bit weird at first, because at the same time it's kind of like riding a bike. You I knew how they did things, and it worked out well for both sides, because it's not like you're trying to train someone again on what to do. You come back in, it takes you a couple weeks to kind of remember a few things of how we kind of do things here, and you jump right back in. So it was good, because really all the same guys that were here when I left were still here, and so it wasn't a whole new group. Um, they were welcoming, and it was good. It's like getting the band back together. So I mean, look, obviously for me to have the title and the things that you look at with that, I have as good a group of guys here as you could ever assemble. We've got me and 4 full-time people and 3 part-time people to take care of stadium field, practice fields, landscape around offices, and training camp fields 65 miles away. And so that's not one that, I'm going to sit and make every decision. I mean, these guys, they know how to grow grass. They know what they're doing. I don't have to hold their hand. There's no babysitting going on. It's, hey, what do you need? What do you need me to do to help you do your job? And they go, and they make me look good at the end of the day.
So you talked sort of about the different facilities you're working with. Do you assign those guys specific sites, or is it sort of a collective in the sense of you're all sort of have priorities on a day-to-day basis? I used to work for Chris Ecton with the Steelers, so we were sort of sporadically put different places at different times. So I was sort of curious if you ran a little differently in the sense of people were sort of home base, say practice facility, stadium, and then obviously probably the off 65 miles offsite start probably beginning of the summer prepping for training camp. But I was sort of curious how it sort of was run.
Yeah, I have a guy that he's basically been, doing the stadium field he's been here for 38 years.
That's dedication.
He knows the stadium field like the back of his hand, And so in that, I'm not going to take him off of there and move him somewhere else. Obviously, if someone's on vacation or he needs to do something, he can go anywhere that we need him to go. But I basically try to take it kind of from the golf side of, in golf, you generally have people in section work, right? So, section 1 may be holes 1, 6, you might go 1, 6, 11, like however the golf course balances out. You're going to have 4 or 5 greens that are yours, right? And that you mow greens, you rake bunkers, you hand water, and it kind of turns into a competition over time of whose section looks the best or who's doing good work. And so I really try to take it the same way of, put you in a position that you're comfortable. Obviously, I want everyone's going to be uncomfortable at some point, right? You're going to do something for the first time that you're going to be uncomfortable. I mean, for us, that was our snow game last year. We'd never had a snow game here, ever. And I was freaking out. I mean, it's one that, obviously you don't want to mess it up on national television, right? And so you don't get practice runs. There's no practice runs for that. You just hop in and go, So I try to put guys in positions that they're comfortable and that they're confident. And also, I don't micromanage these guys. I let them go. If they would say, hey, I feel like the field needs fertilizer, I'm going to say, well, what do you want to put out? We may talk about what's going to go out or what we may need to think about if maybe we don't want to go too hot or maybe we need to go a little bit lower in or in certain scenarios, maybe we need to put a hot brew out because we maybe top dressed and we're trying to get sand through or whatever. But it's generally just a discussion of what do I think? What do they think? And it's a team effort at the end of the day.
That's awesome. Especially because, again, we were talking earlier and you were talking about how, again, you guys had the longest season of any NFL team and there were so many moving parts, especially when the harsher weather comes in with your location and the transition zone. How do you keep team morale up? Obviously, you talked about how you got to be passionate about what you're doing and everything that you're working towards, but you said the 4th game in 5 weeks. That's a lot of traffic and a lot of different aspects that you got to maintain throughout all that. How are you sort of keeping a level head with everybody in the sense of having everything prepared for practice, having everything prepared for the game? What is it that you're trying to do to optimize sort of efficiency for the guys?
Well, I mean, here, it's always kind of been this way here. We really want to do what we need to do. We want to go home. The more hours you work doesn't mean that you worked harder. I worked 70 hours last week. Well, did you have to work 70 hours or you just not efficient enough that you could get it done in 50 or 60? It just depends on the situation, I mean, when you have snow removal, all night snow removals going into game days and those type of things, obviously, it's a line that George Toma actually told me 20 years ago at a Super Bowl. He said, you got to know when to beat the horse and when to leave it alone. And so for us, I try to give my guys time off and, when they need it. If they say, look, I need to take tomorrow off, then take tomorrow off. It's one that we're going to figure it out. If that means we have to stay for an hour as a group tomorrow for a guy that needs a day off, then you take a day off. When it gets really into crunch time and we really have to go, we go hard when we have to go hard. And then if that means we're going to sit here and we're going to hang out and we're going to talk for an hour or two to just chill out and try to rest up a little bit, then we do that. When you're trying to grow grass in December and January and we're trying to cover practice fields and blow heat down there while we're trying to cover the stadium field with grow tarps and put grow lights out, I mean, that's a full day in itself right there. And so, we do those things as efficiently as we can. And, our maintenance staff here at Arrowhead, we steal people all the time from them because as a grounds crew, we don't have enough people. to go cover 2 practice fields with 8 tarps. We're stealing 20 guys that are trying to clean the stadium, and half the time we're taking them off their jobs. And so, the entire maintenance department here helps us out tremendously to be able to accomplish what we need to accomplish. Because usually when we blow heat, someone's staying all night. Now, sometimes that means 1 or 2 guys will stay here from 7 a.m. until midnight, and a couple guys will stay here from 7 to 3:30. They'll leave at 3:30 and they'll come back at midnight and then work from midnight to maybe 3 or 4 p.m. the next day. So it's a roller coaster for sure when we get into that December, January weather. And, if the team says, hey, we want to go outside tomorrow, then we're going to do everything we can to get them outside. So, everyone's tired by the end of the year. And, I really try to make sure that they can get a little bit of a mental break and a physical break, before we start over again in March.
So you're hoping to keep the fields as safe as possible for the players, which includes, 350-pound linemen. What kind of things are you guys doing to the field to not only make it safe, but to keep to the high standard of the NFL?
I think that just comes down to, here I have a group of guys that take tremendous pride in trying to make this thing look like there wasn't a game, that there's never been a game played on it. Right now, obviously, sometimes we're successful at that and sometimes we're not. But it's obviously the goal every time. Everyone has the same goal at the end of the day of what can we do, how can we get better, and they work their tails off to do it. And when we're putting grow lights out for 24 or 48 hours, it's a lot of work to put those out just for that short amount of time. And there's never a balk at it at all. It's, hey, let's do it. Let's go see what we can get accomplished and knock out. We have an hour. Let's see if we can go get them out. And they work hard to do that. And the things that we do the most, everyone talk about trying to grow grass in December and January. If you have to grow grass in December and January, you're in trouble. Everything that we do for December and January starts in August. It's really what we do August, September, October, November that gets us prepared for the December, January run. We just try to keep the field as smooth as we possibly can. We do a lot of top dressing here. I kind of look at the stadium field, or any field for that aspect, as a big green, right? It's not obviously it's not rolling 11 on the stent meter, but you're trying to keep the surface as smooth as you possibly can. So, if we have a 2-week break in between games, we may get the 3-ton roller out and we'll roll it. And we'll throw a light top dress on it. We'll drag it. Make sure that, it's a good smooth surface, and then try to grow that back in for the next game.
From social media, seeing pictures and whatnot, you guys always do a fantastic job of recovery wise and just making it look like, again, you're talking level and everything. I'm curious what type of turf grass you growing, and how has that changed since you have been there when you first started before the golf stint?
So when I first got here in 1998, we were 419, which is kind of the grandfather of Bermuda. And then we would overseed with perennial rye. When I came back in 2010, we were still 419 and overseeding with perennial rye. And then we did a little bit of testing with Patriot Bermuda at our practice fields and up at St. Joe. Really, our training camp fields are our ultimate test ground. We can try things there that we really want to try here, but you can't necessarily roll the dice a week before an NFL game. You have to know really what you're going to get before you try it here. So we use our training camp fields as a pretty big test ground of trying some different things and different grasses there of what we get. Obviously, if we're not going to use it if we don't think it's going to be better than what we have. And so I had done quite a bit of research on Northbridge as Northbridge and Latitude came out. And we decided to go with Northbridge actually, they only had 3 acres of it in Missouri at the time. We needed 2 of it to do the stadium field. So we actually just switched the stadium field basically from one year to the next and went to Northbridge because we'd heard enough things about it that we felt like it would, at the worst, it would at least be what we had from 419. So now we are Northbridge. We're still Northbridge, and we overseed with a mix of rye and chewings fescue, so that the fine fescue can kind of take the shade in the colder temps as we get a little bit later in the year. And actually, next year I'm going to try tetraploid ryegrass in a blend of perennial with chewings and tetraploid. And then I'll probably get a full pallet of straight tetraploid because it will, at least in labs, it will germinate in half the time in 40-degree soil temps of normal perennial rye. So, if I have that 2-week window, like, let's say we have a bye again between end of season and playoff game. If you really looked at our playoff games this year, the middle was still sodded to Bermuda from we had done a gut in December because at that point we were still a 2 seed. And so if you're ending the season with back-to-backs and going straight into the playoffs, you just want to be safe on making sure that, if you don't get weather, if you need to resod and you don't have the weather, you don't want to be stuck in a spot that you can't. So, we did it. And then we had that 2 weeks. I'm thinking, man, we can really, try to get some rye in here and get this thing where it doesn't even look like we ever even sodded it. We didn't get any sun. Weather really didn't cooperate. And the seed was out, but we just never could get it to germinate. So I was on a Zoom call. We use Seed Research at Oregon for a lot of our overseed, and I was on a Zoom call and somebody asked Travis, "Do you need anything?" And I was just joking around. I was like, "Yeah, I need something that'll germinate in 35-degree soil temps." And someone on the call was like, "Well, we might have something for that." And I was like, "All right, well, that was just a joke, but I'll go ahead and ride with this." So after looking at it, researching it, I think that we're going to go down that road next year and just see what we get. It looks like it could be really good for us going forward.
That's awesome to hear because we haven't heard anything like that from anyone else about their overseeding program with the chewing and the whole new scientific findings. And I love how it turns out a joke could be the saving grace for years to come,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, we've all been taught what's in the box, right? We're all taught really in schools, and you're all taught the same things for the most part. At the end of the day, I already know what's in the box. I'm trying to add to the box. And sometimes, we've done things here that haven't always worked out. My biggest thing is I'm not afraid to try. If you fail, you fail, but you have to be smart about when you do those things. It's early in the year. It's on at training camp fields. If we have 10 weeks, I can take 1 week or 2 weeks, say, hey, I really think that this can make fields better. Let's see what happens. And if we don't like it, then we don't like it. But, we've learned an awful lot of just trial and error that way. And the people, look, part of it too is in this business is there's always someone smarter than you. Don't be afraid to use them. That's why they're there. You got all these people with doctorates in these seed companies that they're in those positions for a reason. I call and say, hey, we have major shade issues. That's what got us on the fine fescue in the first place. We're saying, look, we're having trouble once November gets here and we get in December, January, we just have a lot of trouble growing grass. We didn't have grow lights then. So we're trying to find something that potentially can grow in 3 to maybe 4 hours worth of light a day. And that's really where the chewings came from, is they said, well, why don't we try this and put this in a blend? And we said, okay. And now we're going to try tetraploid along with that. Obviously, I kind of put my 2 cents in of, they may say, let's go 60, 20, 20. I say, well, I'd rather go a 50, 25, 25, or we figure out what we think is going to be the best end result. But use the people that are there and just trust their years of experience as well to help you do your job better.
You were and that's incredible. I love that. You were talking about growth lights. With Arrowhead, is there a lot of shade problems when it comes to later on in the season? Obviously, what sort of brought you to the growth lights? Because you said you hadn't had them at that point. What brought you to that, and has it been really beneficial for you, sort of as of late, being able to put those out on the field during the colder temps of the winter?
Yeah, they're awesome. I mean, look, Green Bay really started the whole thing. I mean, as far as football goes, I know they've been used in Europe for soccer and those things. But the traffic, the type of traffic is so different. Gold miles are pretty similar. The rest of the traffic isn't quite as similar. So when Green Bay got them, and Allen did a lot of testing up there with those, and he really is the leader of the pack, no pun intended, on getting the rest of us that are using them. I mean, the information that they got off of them was incredible. And so we, between Andre and myself, there was a guy here for a couple of years named Jay Warnick, and Jay he knew Alan Johnson pretty well, and they had talked quite a bit. And so we brought in a small light as a trial first, and the next year we got a light, and then a couple of years later we bought another light. So we have two. Our shade issues, the tunnel, we only have one tunnel, and it's about 16 feet wide, and it's in the southeast corner. So in the winter, the stadium is 100 feet tall, and you just don't get really any light down, the south sideline and that kind of east end. You just struggle. So we park one light around the tunnel, the mouth of the tunnel, and part of that end zone. I mean, Arrowhead's small. If you've never been here, I mean, our sideline space is minuscule, especially in the corners. It's tight. And so, you're just trying to get grass to grow anywhere that you can possibly grow it, and the lights have been incredible to help us do that. We'll put them out for 3 or 4 days straight, maybe shut them off for a night to give it a rest, and then turn them on again for 4 days straight. Anything that we'll put grow lights on top of grow tarps. We'll turn the heat up underneath and put grow lights out and grow tarps out. Anything that we think we can do to try to force grass to grow in cold temps, we try it. We've done everything from hand watering the entire stadium field on top of the grow tarps, so you're not taking them off. So you're getting every bit of heat held in as you possibly can. A lot of it is just discussions that we have. What do we think as a group? What if we try this? What if we try that? We sit and just throw ideas back and forth. And then at some point, if there's something that comes out that at least the majority agrees with, most of the time, all of us agree with it. But, if the majority agrees, we say, well, let's try it.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm actually I'm a Green Bay fan, and I knew they used all those different techniques and stuff. I didn't know that they led the rest of the league. So that's really cool to hear about. So we had Dr. McNitt on a couple of episodes ago, and he talked about his role as a field testing consultant for the NFL. Can you discuss the different components of those tests that they do, if you know, and what they kind of ensure with playability of the field?
Well, the biggest test that we do, I'm sure he talked about the Clegg, I would assume. Did he talk about that?
Yeah.
That's just measuring, how hard the field is. And as you get more and more traffic isolated in areas, it's definitely a phenomenal tool to help us know what areas need to be treated. When you're taking tests for every game and you can see that the center has Clegged for the first 3, 4, 5 games at maybe in the 70s or something, and then you gradually get in the 80s. As you start to it just gives you an idea of really where you need to spot treat. Obviously, there's a lot of times we don't have time to go grab a Toro 648 or a aerifier and go out and aerify the whole field. The Clegg really gives us a really good idea of the areas that we need to hit, how often we need to hit them, and just, make sure that we're within the required numbers from the league. The other one is we use a moisture meter, which kind of helps us figure out really where we want moisture to be, by game time. If a field is too dry, then sometimes it'll shear a little bit different. Obviously, if a field is too wet, sometimes it can be slick. So you're trying to kind of find that sweet spot of where you want, your moisture to be. We also use the shear vane tester to just kind of see where we stand. As you get into the lower light, the plant's not growing near as aggressively, you'll start to lose your shear numbers will start to drop a little bit. You're just trying to kind of figure out what you're doing to help keep those numbers up, and also just where you stand compared to where you want to be. I mean, the shear goes a little bit back and forth. Like if you go out in top dress and we have a little more sand at the top, then it may shear lower, but that your grass below that is still the same number it was before. So we try to use, all those tools to our advantage of just making sure that, we're doing the right things and can make playing surface as good as we can every week.
You sort of talked about different cultural practices, even with things like rolling. I've noticed that's more of an NFL thing, again, probably due to the fact that men are bigger and they're definitely a lot more movement with the power of their strength and whatnot. What cultural practices are you focusing on your Northbridge? And how have you sort of seen that change over the years? Because actually I remember, I think it was your first Northbridge field. I had visited Chad Price down in Charlotte, and he points out, "Oh, this is a brand new Northbridge for Kansas City. We just top dressed, and we're gonna top dress tomorrow." I'm like, seems really aggressive, and that's at the sod farm, obviously, probably prepping to move it. But what is it that you're focusing on to prepare for the season and for those long months? Like you said, it starts in August, getting ready for December. What is it that you're focusing on?
As much grass per square inch as I can have. I used to, I think part of this is kind of the golf course world of, I worked in Florida for a year, and we used to double verticut tees and greens like once a month. Right. And so you're trying to thin them out and keep them from scalping. And, you're trying to thin a little bit there, where we tried that here for a while with Bermuda, and the longer I've watched it, the more I've kind of gone the other direction. In all honesty, I don't do near as many cultural practices as you probably think I would. If we have a good window to core, we'll try to core at least once just to make sure we have good gas exchange. And also, obviously, if you roll that behind coring, you're going to be pretty smooth. So we'll try to core if we have that opportunity, a 3 or 4 week break, to get some holes, some cores pulled and get holes in it and let it breathe real well, and know that if we have a rain game or whatever, we're going to drain well. After that, I really go into more of a primo regimen. We stay under primo for probably all the way through October. I'm trying to get as many plants per square inch I possibly can. So we mow super tight. I actually got this from golf. I don't know if anyone here has ever heard of a guy named Paul Latshaw, but he was a golf course superintendent. He did like 18 majors, at least 18, but he was the superintendent at Augusta, Wingfoot, Congressional, a couple other places. And they asked him one time, "How do you get your rough so thick?" And he said, "Well, for a year before a tournament, I mow it at 1 inch for the entire year. And I keep ferting it and I keep taking care of it like normal. And then about, a few weeks before they show up here, I let it grow to 6 inches." And I started thinking, well, that makes sense. Like it's going to be super thick as you're cutting it tighter and you're tillering out and it's tightening up. All of a sudden you let it grow. It just makes sense. So we actually tried that up at training camp 3 or 4 years ago, where we dropped the height down to a half inch and mowed it like 4 or 5 directions to just make sure it's completely chopped down to a half inch. It was a little bit of a scalp, but it was a whiteout, and then watered it for a couple days. And right as it started to green up, we sprayed like 3 or 4 ounces of Primo. And then a week later, we sprayed like 6 ounces of Primo. And then I was determined to figure out how much Primo was going to take to keep us at 9/16 and not scalp. So we maintained 9/16 for the next 4 or 5 weeks, and actually kept it under that 6-ounce rate of Primo all the way through training camp. And it was incredible how much traffic it could take compared to what we normally saw. And so it's really something that we've done with the rest of the fields. What we learned there really has translated to the rest of our fields here at Arrowhead, between practice fields and stadium field. We're trying to keep it as tight as we can, as long as we can, and then right before they get on it, we'll take it from 9/16 to 3/4. That doesn't sound like a lot. I mean, it's a lot of tissue available when you go from 9/16 to 3/4, and by having that much leaf tissue, we recover pretty quick as well, even under Primo. So it's worked out really well for us.
I love to hear how you say you test frequently. I think that's so cool, and just trying to improve the process. I think that's awesome. We sort of touched base on it. Where you're at, again, we're very similar to where you're located in the transition zone. I don't know exactly where you are, but you are at the top end of the transition zone with your Bermuda. And you've said you start in August, preparing for the winter. What else are you doing specifically to combat those cold temperatures? Obviously, you have the growth lights. Is there anything specific that you can talk to the kids about as we try and do stuff here as well with the budget we have? But so they know more sort of at your level what you're doing compared to what we're doing.
Yeah, we're trying to manipulate the surface. You're trying to force a plant to grow in something that normally it doesn't want to grow in. And so if, a couple years ago, we had a late concert. We had a Ed Sheeran concert in October. And so I couldn't really overseed before the concert because I knew I was going to have to replace grass, at least around the stage, 30, 40,000 square feet after the concert. I knew that if one end was overseeded and I'm bringing in grass from Chad, that even if it is overseeded, it's still not going to match. We're never going to match ever. And so we kept it straight Bermuda all the way through till like October 20 something. And you're trying to make sure it's green every week. And so what we kind of learned in that process is I don't really like to use green dye because I can't tell what the plant is doing. It throws me off of what's going on. So I try not to really ever use it if at all possible. But in that scenario, what we did is we got through a late September game, and we had a game like the first week of October. Temperatures were still decent. So in that scenario, maybe we just throw out grow tarps. And, we have underground heat. So we'll maybe crank the heat up to 65, 70 degrees. That's 4.5 inches down. So at the top, obviously, if you're, 45, 50 outside, you're not going to be 70 at the top, but you can still be in a warm enough range that between grow tarps gaining 10 to 15 degrees. Grow tarps, I would say, average 10 to maybe 15 degrees on the high end of a grow tarp. So what we decided to try was, let's put not too heavy of a top dress, but maybe like a 1/16 of an inch out. And then, so like we had a game, we had 2 weeks for the next game. So on that Monday, we top dressed and we painted the field green and then put the grow tarp on. So the sand is the sand obviously is drawing heat along with the green, along with the grow tarp, and with the ground heat. We actually got like full recovery in that 2 week span of like, it looked like you hadn't played a game out here. It's like, holy cow, that was awesome, because then you just mow all the green right back off and you're back to natural. So it was, we're basically just trying to manipulate the surface any way we can. A lot of times here, that sand, if you get a decent top dress out somewhere between the 16th and the 8th, you can really draw some heat if the sun is out, even without a grow tarp. So once we add grow tarps to that, we can gain probably pushing 20 degrees by doing that. So.
Sorry. So with the high standards of the NFL or that they expect for your fields, you have more resources to maintain your facilities. What machinery do you find essential for practices, and what type of machinery are you guys using?
I think every guy has the way that he wants to maintain grass. Everyone we're all trying to achieve the same goal at the end of the day, and we're all doing it maybe a little bit different. For us here, we got a golf course fairway roller that is like the rollers fold out, and it's like a 200-gallon tank. So it's not, too much compaction. It's not like throwing a 3-ton roller on it and, pounding it. It does a real good job though for us of, if we want it a little bit lighter, we'll drain some water, or if we want to keep it heavy, we'll fill it full with 200 gallons. But, we generally use that, 3 days a week at the practice facility to just make sure after practice we mow. Usually after you mow, it's pretty smooth, but between that and the roller and some light top dresses, we can keep the surface pretty smooth. In the stadium field, we'll bring that roller up here if we need it, but depending on what kind of break we have, sometimes we'll bust out, the 3-ton roller and just make sure that the surface is good and smooth, and maybe come behind that with a pencil tine or we run a Toro 648 walk behind air fire, just to make sure that we're not adding traffic anywhere. We have enough traffic as is, especially on the sideline. So, we'll walk the field with pencil tines, maybe like a 2.5 by 2.5 inch spacing between that and rollers. And I think the biggest piece of equipment we have here that I like is, two. One is a Dakota turf tender, a big 460 turf tender, toe behind top dresser. And, we use it everywhere. That thing, it runs a lot. I like to throw sand. The other one is we have a Terracombi seeder, and it is probably the best machine I've seen myself of overseeding Bermuda. So, you have like a 3/8 inch tine every inch. And so we actually get seed in, every inch across the field. We'll go a couple directions, and we can go from Bermuda to Rye in 12 days. So pretty awesome.
That's a plus. You sort of talked about it earlier as well. How often or frequently are you replacing certain areas? So obviously between the hashes at a certain time frame, you obviously gauge the threshold of what you think is safe and what's not. Are you replacing the field on an annual basis? Are you doing certain things that are not annual? And with that, do you have any major concerns, anything like spring dead spot or any other pressures that are threatening the turf?
We get some spring dead spot here and there, but it's not anything that, you can aerify it, throw aluminum sulfate as the temperatures come up, and you can come right out of that. Anytime the field really, we try to never, ever resod, ever. I don't like anything about it because I want to grow grass, and two, it comes down to no matter how good it is what you're bringing in, I know what I'm playing on. And so, I like it to be, why am I going to take something out that I know what it is to bring in something that I don't know what it is? So we really rarely do we resod during a season. It's rare. Um, we'll throw a gut sometimes if it's one where, like, look, if you know the playoffs are coming in Kansas City, you can't wait until the playoffs get here to resod. I can't wait until first week of January and say, I guess I'm going to try to throw a gut in, because all of a sudden we have 6 inches of snow coming and temperatures are a high of 27, and now you're screwed. I would rather get it in earlier, wherever I have the biggest gap between games is where I want to throw it in, so that like we replaced a gut this year that we had 3 weeks in between games. And when you have that time, then you can take your time and make sure that, you can get it top dressed, you can roll, and you can just get it how you want it, how you want it to play, and where you think it's the best for your facility.
And I do remember, I think a couple years ago, you transitioned with the gut from the season before, and it looked impeccable. So I think that talks a lot about you as a manager when it comes to turf. With that being said, we want to sort of shift the conversation sort of towards what your standards are in the workplace when it comes to who your employees are. Obviously, you seem like you've built a very good bond with your crew and you have full trust in them. Sort of what standards do you set so that bond is not tampered with or have an issue among your guys? And again, like we talked about before, you keep them at a high level because of how you manage them. So what is that standard that you set forth for them?
Really, it comes down to respecting each other. We're all going to have different opinions sometimes of what we think is right or wrong. And sometimes someone else is right that maybe you thought they were wrong, and no, we're going to do this. And then it turns out they're right. It comes down to really just respecting each other. And I just want to have fun, man. The biggest thing for me is I want to have fun. Some days are worse than others, right? There's days in any job that some days you go home and say, man, today sucked. But, even on those bad days, it doesn't mean that you can't joke around and laugh and try to make it as fun as you possibly can. Really, we try to honestly just have as much fun and get our work done as we possibly can.
Yeah. So lots of the students in our program, including myself, have taken an interest in the industry and might want to work in the NFL. As an industry leader, what are you looking for in someone when you're hiring?
We have we have an internship here for training camp each year that we have someone that we bring in to kind of help run those fields up there through the summer, and I kind of turn them loose. And obviously, I don't turn them loose and say, "Hey, go grow this like it's yours." There's a conversation of basically when you get here, have you ever been on a mower? Can you mow this? If you can't, then we'll teach you how to mow it. Have you ever calibrated fertilizer? Have you ever walk calibrated? Yes. Well, have you ever calibrated a Vicon? No. Okay, well, we're going to learn that today. I have a good group of guys where we really enjoy teaching someone else because we know there's someone coming behind us down the road, right? And I wouldn't be where I am if someone didn't do that for me. And I have a multitude of guys that have done that for me. And I feel like it's my responsibility to kind of pass that going forward. Of some guys are insecure enough in their jobs that they don't ever want to show anyone else because they're afraid that someone's going to come take their job or whatever. For me, I feel like it's my job to teach. I enjoy the teaching side. As far as what I'm looking for is someone that just wants to learn. You don't have to know everything when you walk in the door, but you also don't need to act like you do know everything when you walk in the door if you don't. In all honesty, that's probably the biggest turnoff of anyone is when they come in and they try to tell you that they know it or they try to show you that they know, but they really don't. It's, you really end up making better progress when you can just say, I don't know that, but I can try to find the answer. Or when you just flat out say, I don't know it, but I would love to learn it. Those are I want the people that want to really learn and succeed, and obviously in that, I'm going to do everything I can to help that person succeed.
Yeah. So kind of piggybacking off of that, then, what can you say about your leadership style and like how it is effective in the workplace, at least when you have someone who's there to learn and wants to learn?
Then you give them the opportunity to learn. It's not always when they want to. Sometimes guys say, well, I want to do that. Well, I'm not going to put you on a sprayer on the stadium field 10 days before a game. It's probably not going to happen. Now, if you want to ride up to St. Joe on the training camp fields one day and fire up a sprayer and you want to learn how to do it, then by all means, that's a place that we can learn. We have time. We can even start with just water, um, and just get on it, get comfortable, drive it around, pretend you're spraying a chemical and spray water. But sometimes it's, well, I want to know now. Well, it doesn't always work that way. It comes down to when, we feel like it's a comfortable time for everyone to not have any sort of thing that can backfire, and we can give the opportunity to do that. My management style, like I said, is more, let's have fun and do what we need to do and go home. I don't micromanage my guys. I mean, if you interviewed them, they may say he doesn't talk to us enough. I don't know. It's one that I trust all of them, and I want them to have ownership in what they're doing, and also give them a little bit of rope to do what they feel like is right as well. It doesn't always have to be my way. When it's crunch time, really there's probably nothing that I like more is when they start to do it on their own and they call and say, hey, what do you think about this? Or maybe I need help with something. It kind of brings me back to like, well, I guess they haven't seen everything yet, but I got some really talented guys here, and in that, it really makes it a really good setup for me. They make me look good at the end of the day.
I do have a question. Was Ben Kramer there? So I knew Ben from Tech, and he was the first guy that I actually worked with on the grounds crew at Tech. So he was a big mentor to me. And with you, you've been a mentor to many turf managers across the country and over the years, even with golf. Was there ever anyone that was a mentor to you that sticks out that you think will help you get to where you are today?
I got a bunch of them. Mike Lee, he was at Black Wolf Run up in Wisconsin. When I went to Pebble, Tom Houston, he was the superintendent at Pebble. Chris Dahlhammer was the superintendent at Spyglass, and then Chris went to Pebble when Tom left. Jeff Steen, he was the assistant at Pebble as well. Those guys all really, I drove them crazy a lot of times because, at the time I really didn't understand, the pressures that come with being the superintendent at Pebble Beach or Spyglass or whatever. I was just there and I wanted to learn, and I asked a million questions, and there were probably times that they thought I was the dumbest person on the planet with some of the questions I probably asked, but I never really worried about anyone else's perception of me as much as I don't know this, and I want to know this. I want to learn this. Those guys went out of their way, man, to really take me under their wing and really legit teach. And then also put me in uncomfortable positions of, hey, we're going to be gone at GCSAA for 5 days. The golf course is yours. Don't mess it up, And in that's when you go from just reading what's beside your name or maybe making up a few jobs and having guys do. And, Chris really at the time was, really leading the group, especially agronomically, of how we were going to take care of the golf course. and then to put me in a position that he's going to take the other assistant because he'd been an assistant for a couple of years, and so I was only been an assistant for a couple months. And he was like, "We're out. We're going to GCSAA, and the place is yours. Don't mess it up." And I remember going home thinking, well, this is kind of sink or swim time. It's I guess we'll see all the things that I've thought over the years as an intern or even an assistant. Well, if I'm the superintendent, I wouldn't do that, or I would do this, or I would do whatever. All of a sudden, when the responsibility is on you, things change pretty quickly, and kudos to him for trusting me enough for that. But it was a huge eye opener for me to really be put in the position that I had to make decisions and make sure I made the right decisions. And I try to do that with my own guys, just if they come to me and say, "Hey, well, we haven't furted, something for a couple weeks," I say, "Well, why not? I'll tell you what to do every day if you want, but that's not what I want for you at the end of the day. What I want for you at the end of the day is that you can make that decision. That you know what needs to happen because of your own knowledge, not off of what I told you to do."
That's the goal, really. To have that opportunity that you're talking about, and that's really what we try to do here. We're putting, I think what's the freshman, 14 years old, 13-year-old on commercial grade equipment, just sort of making sure they're safe, obviously, but again, giving them the opportunity that a 13-year-old would never really get. So,
Absolutely.
And sort of a side question that I'm sort of interested in personally, how was it at Pebble with everything out there? Monterey is gorgeous, and you're talking about the pressure and whatnot. I would be scared to work there. So I'm sort of curious how that was for you.
There's a lot of hours. When I first got there as an intern, you're basically there from I fertilized 18 green a lot of times in the dark.
Nice.
It is an awesome piece of property. It's an awesome place. The company gives you every tool you could possibly ask for to do your job. The pressure is that there's 70,000 rounds a year, and you want it to look as good on day one as it is day 365, And so I learned a ton there of just traffic areas, how to take care of traffic areas. I think the biggest thing that I learned from there that I still use the most today is what we did for tournament prep, how we got the golf course ready for the AT&T or, the California State AM, or we didn't have any U.S. Opens while I was there, but we had 2 or 3 PGA type sanctioned tournaments a year. We had the Callaway in the fall, and just the way that we would sit down and Chris would just say, "Hey, here's where we are, and here's where we need to be in 5 weeks. How are we going to get there?" Obviously he already knew how he was going to get there, but he would involve us in the conversation because he wanted to hear what we had to say in case we said something that maybe made sense. With me, probably wasn't as often as I wish it was, but it really helped me think about not just like this week or next week, but where do we need to be in a month? Where do I need to be 2 months from now? And how am I going to get there? Every week that we have a game here, I pretty much go back to how we got the golf course ready for the AT&T and how you want it to shine Thursday through Sunday. Here, obviously, we're trying to shine on Sunday. So you're trying to get it to peak at that Friday, Saturday mark so that you're really good for Sunday. It was awesome, man. I loved every minute of it.
And I think that Pebbles, the uniqueness of it is that having those championships and on an annual basis when you have some people who have a championship once every 15 years and they're planning 4 years out, So I think that's awesome. You had mentioned them sort of going to GCSAA. I was curious, since you have been on both sides of the fence with golf and sports turf, could you speak to the significance of STMA and GCSAA and how they had an impact on your career? Obviously, with the number of golf courses that you worked at, there had to be some influence from that in a sense, unless it was just through word of mouth from fellow workers and whatnot. Um, but what kind of impact did that have on your career, those organizations and your membership to them?
I think the biggest thing is the education that they both provide. If you just go to GCSAA to go party it up for a few days and then go to a trade show, that's fun. You get a good time. But, one of the best class I ever took was a USGA construction class at GCSAA. You're in class for a couple hours a day for 2 straight days for that. And it was awesome. And there's things that, you were taught it in school or they discussed it or whatever. They didn't go in depth like the USGA is going to go in depth on their own setup. And you really, both of those organizations, you get out of them what you put in. I love to learn, and it's probably one of my favorite sayings. I've always said, I don't want to keep up with the Joneses. I want to be the Joneses. I want people trying to keep up with me. I want something at the end of the day that people say, how in the hell are you doing that? And to do that, sometimes you got to be a little bit outside the box and maybe try things that, aren't necessarily taught in school. But, I try to learn every year. I try to learn something. I don't keep a bunch of notes. People ask all the time, do you keep records of all the furt you put out or what you do? And I don't. And the biggest reason I don't is I've seen places that do that, and I've seen places that fall back to those. And this July 14th may not be the same as last July 14th. And sometimes those decisions change from one year to the next. So, I purposefully don't keep a whole lot of record on that because I don't want my decisions to be wavered off of something I did before if there's something I can do better today.
So if you were given the opportunity to go back in time and talk to your 23-year-old self as you're getting into the industry, what kind of advice would you give yourself just for your future in the industry?
Don't be an idiot. I have plenty of stories I cannot share on here of things that I've done that, sometimes I wonder how I made it through some places of just why some people put up with me. But I think the biggest thing honestly, there's not a lot I would change. I mean, one thing that I was taught growing up is just go in and work hard and do your job, right? Take pride in what you do. And, even as a kid growing up playing golf, my dad always told me, leave the golf course in better shape than you found it. That's just as a player. That's not even as a worker. And so when I started working in it, obviously your goal is to make it something better every day. Chris Dalhammer, when he was at SPY, we had a conversation, like a 3-hour, we were going to a GCSA meeting, like a local chapter meeting up in Northern California. And he asked me one day, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to be able to come in with a list of 125 things that need to be done like he did. I've never seen anyone with the attention to detail that he could make one lap around the golf course and he would have a list like prioritized of what we need to do to get ready for the AT&T. Now, I saw, 30 of them, but not the other 95, and you're like, how does he see grass in the cracks on the sidewalk going to the driving range from his golf cart on number one. Like, how do you even see that? Those are things that I was just completely, I had no idea how he did it. He just told me, every day you're trying to make your problems smaller. You're going to start any place you go, and you're going to fix the big problems first. And then you're going to go to the medium problems. And what you hope for at the end of the day is that you're looking for really small problems. You're always going to have problems. If you don't have any, then you're not doing your job. But you're hoping that you have really small problems. And that's, where we really have tried to get to at Arrowhead is, we're trying to look for the little tiny things to do to go fill a few divots, or, hey, we need to edge the track, not, holy cow, we've got sodium-induced wilt and we need to core and, flush and then reload and try to get this thing to root before the next game. Like, you're trying to keep your problems extremely small. And that's what we try to do here.
I think that's incredible. So we do this with when we wrap up, we sort of want to give the kids the best words of advice that we can, our guests can give. Not talking about the industry, not talking about turf or anything like that. These are high school students. Some are graduating in less than 6 months now. Do you have any words of advice entering the world? Just what's the best way of sort of going about your future and what you should be looking for moving forward into the world, whether it's college or a job or in the turf industry? What would you suggest for best words of advice?
Number one, I tell every kid I've ever talked to this: don't burn bridges. If I was a jackass and I was at Arrowhead and I left here on bad terms and just decided to air out any frustration I'd ever had here, if I aired it out and I walk out the door, I'm never getting back in here, ever. You never know where that door is going to open, and you never know who you cross in life that one day may be the person hiring you. And, the best advice I can give is don't burn bridges. Just be courteous. Sometimes you have to bite your tongue and think before you speak. Don't make rash decisions. Just think it completely through and work hard. At the end of the day, people are going to notice, especially in today's day and age. There's a lot of the younger generation that gets looked at as they put their hand out and, well, who's going to take care of me, or who's going to do something for me? Or sometimes you have to make your own way. And in that, the easiest way to do that is to work hard, and people are going to notice that. You're going to stick out from the get-go by being courteous and working hard. Those two things alone are going to be, huge feathers in your cap, along with maybe staying off your phone longer than 10 to 15 minutes.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's the best advice we've had. You hear that, guys? I know you're on your phone during class with your screens off. Well, we want to say thank you so much for taking the time. This has been amazing. And especially with traveling back from Tampa and everything, I know that you got to be really tired. So we really, really appreciate it. What do you guys say?
Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem. I enjoyed it.
Also, for people that are listening, this week, our students are actually in the STMA National Conference presentation, just so you guys are aware. Tuesday, I think we're the second session, just a heads up. Again, we can't thank you enough. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, no problem.